do something here. There we go. We are live. John Gums, Dakota Grappler, coming to you guys for the first time this year for 2024-25 wrestling season. Got a special guest we're going to talk with tonight, Frank Jasper, the Shute. And then we got, of course, my sidekick, Bill Holtan. We're going to hear to talk wrestling and everything about it. How are you guys doing tonight?
Yeah,
Very good.
Go ahead, Frank.
Great.
No,
Okay,
things are good here on the West Coast. We're not having any major hurricanes or, fire. There is a fire out in Carmel Valley, but I think they kind of have it under control. But other than that, things are good here. And my heart goes out to everybody in Florida, all the way up the coast, to the people that got hit in North Carolina. I have a friend out there as well. So, it's been a tough couple of weeks, and just, holding out. Take care of yourself. Stay safe, guys.
Yeah, hey, that's well said. I had some friends in North Carolina that I was with in Michigan that week when that storm hit North Carolina, and they were heading back home to try to keep everything put together. And I got some great friends along the coast of Florida, and they got hit a little bit this week. So between the floods and hurricanes on the East Coast and the fires on the West, as former wrestler from North Dakota, Billy Holtan, is out fighting fires out west right now for a few more weeks, and we prayed that everything goes safe out there.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, combination of all those wildfires and the floods, two different areas. Yes, everybody stay safe in wrestling country out there, definitely. Well, I've got lots of stuff to talk about. In fact, I got my USA Wrestling hat on tonight. So, of course, all those people out there, I just want to mention to everybody, we have an opportunity to visit and talk a lot about wrestling. But if you guys have any questions or have it, especially for Frank, who's our guest tonight, or Bill and I, it's not quite wrestling season, but feel free to add them in the comments. We'll bring them up, anyone that's appropriate, of course. And we're going to have fun. We're here to promote the sport. North and South Dakota is a small place, but the world, I tell you, is really small. We start bringing on guests like Frank here. All I want to do is basically highlight you, of course. Tell us what you're doing, Frank, right now, and where you're living, if you don't mind, and tell us what your aspirations. I know you're a big ambassador for the sport of wrestling.
Yeah, the last 4 years, I've been working primarily in the area of optimal performance with nutrition. And what I'm trying to, get an understanding of out there to the wrestling community is that there is what I consider a much better way to, as we call it, cut weight or make weight in a healthy way, in a way that you're still feeding your body, you're still feeding your brain, you're still hydrating. All that can be done. It's just a matter of tweaking the diet and also having, I do a very specific type of nutritional read on the proteges that I'm working with. I work with Nick Siriano for the last 4 years. And by working with an elite athlete like that, I realize that we can do certain things that will really advance the wrestling understanding of nutrition. And that if we really kind of dial down into what we used to do or what we've been doing, and we see what we can do, that I'll share in probably some of the pieces tonight, why I recommend going in this direction as opposed to staying with the old patterns and ways that we've been doing, which is really starve the body, dehydrate, overtrain. And I think that if you're still doing that, you're really missing the boat. That, other countries have kind of figured this out. And even the gentleman I spoke with that is working with a masters wrestler is also doing the similar thing that I've been doing, which is to prep them in, get them to get their weight down to the right weight and be there stable. It's only be a couple pounds overweight, like for 2 weeks prior. And then you're actually 2 pounds under, and you're eating in, you're hydrating, you're really kind of, powering into instead of starving into and dehydrating into and overtraining into an event. So there's all sorts of these new products out there, anywhere from H2 to nitric oxide to ketone esters to I have a really super high end type of electrolyte that I like because it's got 90 billion gene expressions. They're also in this bottle, this glass vial that's been cold processed by a gentleman named Rene Quintone, who figured this system out back when Pasteur, he was the same time Pasteur was doing his thing, and Louis Pasteur wanted to heat things because it killed things, but it also killed the enzymes, where Rene Quinton found a way to do a cold processing, retain all the enzymes, retain all these dynamic aspects of water and this, what we call marine-based plasma. So it's just one of these extraordinary products that's available to us now. Okay. So you need to be on the forefront of your nutrition. And I have basics that I give, but I really believe in that everybody needs a specific protocol for their specific nutritional needs, that needs to have a specific amount of products, that each one dosage needs to be monitored. And then you also, what I worked out and found with working with Nick doing these high level events, is that you need to re-engage them after the event to find out what got depleted and re-support that. So we don't want to miss that piece. And we also know that wrestling is very challenging to the system, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and nutritionally, has all these different demands. And as we come into this new season, the weather changes. We're going into fall, and then we'll go into winter. In Oriental medicine, that's when the biggest challenges to the body systems, that's when you're most likely to get sick. And so that's why I also include this whole other dynamic process to support our immune system with these 5 different supplements, and making sure our microbiome is at its very peak, because that's where 60 to 80% of our immune system comes from, those intestines and the microbiome of the body. So you've got to be on that. By the way, they did a beautiful study that found that if you're taking the right probiotic, that helps you with stress and be able to handle stress. So, I mean, it's like, these are just simple things that if you're not taking advantage of them, you're missing out, and you could be really kind of performing at a much better level if you are on, in this program and understanding what it takes and what you need to be taking.
So, quick question. Now, I kind of know your history a little bit, watching other podcasts and getting kind of prepared for this. Now, you go back to a weightlifting background. And is that where your concern for some of the hydration, nutrition, and all that stuff started?
So, I actually was, read the book, The Autobiography of a Bodybuilder by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I said, like, well, I want to be in California. I want to be, hanging out on the beach, lifting weights. I want to be a bodybuilder. And so
you put on the part pretty well.
Well, so what happened was, I was actually going to North Idaho College at the time, but I was not happy with what I was doing and thought I needed to change. And so my dad says, well, you need to develop, you need to have something that you can fall back on, work while you're trying to become a bodybuilder, because you just can't make money at bodybuilding first thing. So I became an iron worker. So for 4 years in Tri-Cities in Washington, I was an iron worker at the Hanford site, and I worked on nuclear reactors. And so I would work a swing shift, and I'd work out every day. And I found this mentor that just worked with me to help, train with me and help me train. And so I started bodybuilding. And so I just became a bodybuilder. And for 2 years, I went from about 180 or 165 to 188. And then I decided to, not be an iron worker and go to school. And so when I went to Eastern Washington, I really then began my, really hard focus on lifting and lifting heavy and getting big. And so I was on a 3-day on, 1-day off wrestling program year round for 3 years. And I went from 188 up to 217. So I got my weight up to that, and I just, I didn't party, I didn't drink, I just was committed, because I started every morning at 6:30, up at the breakfast at 8, in classes all day, then had lunch, went to the I was in the athletic training program as a student trainer. So I was doing pre-med and learning all about anatomy, physiology. That's where I really kind of got into a deeper level, because bodybuilding points you in that direction. And then with all these classes to understand the chemistry and the kinesiology and the nutrition, really kind of gave me some more information to work with. And then I worked with athletes for those 2-3 years that I was a student trainer. I put in 4,000 hours in the athletic training room, completed my curriculum. And that's when I got the role in Vision Quest. And so
Well,
when I
tell us how you got that role. I know a little bit, but there's a lot of people out there that do not. Tell us how that
Well,
went.
I was just an athletic trainer. As a student trainer, you have to be with different teams and different, semesters, so you get a feel of what each team needs. And so this particular semester, I was the wrestling athletic trainer, and so I was just sitting in the room with the team. I was reading my anatomy book, and this guy walked in, and named Rick Thiefalt, and he's kind of watching these guys wrestle. Now, Rick was a wrestler at Eastern, but he got cast in Vision Quest as an extra. And so he took the time off of wrestling that season to do the movie, and because there was time commitments and things like that. And so he's sitting there and watching these guys wrestling, and he says, I'm doing this movie, and he says, they're still looking for somebody, and like 6 foot tall, muscular build that can wrestle. And he goes, that's you. And he says, you can do this. And I was like, well, I don't know. I've never acted, never done. He goes, it's just so simple, Frank. They pay you to wrestle. You get to show up. They take really good care of you. It's like, here. He gives me this number. He says, call this lady. She's really nice. And so he kind of talked me into it. Now, at the time, at the time, I was on the weekends, I was working as a bouncer at this place called the Slab Inn, which is between Idaho and Washington. So all the people that are not old enough in Washington, guess where they go? They go here. And most of them get really stupid. And the first thing they do is get in a fight. So it's like, I'm just breaking up fights all night. That's all I'm doing. I'm not even taking money at the door. I'm just walking around breaking up fights. And I'm not getting paid a whole lot for that. So I thought, okay, well, if I can go wrestle, because I have some wrestling background, so I can go do this and make some money and see how a movie gets made. Hey, that sounds like it could be a win-win. So what do? I show up. It took me about 3 or 4 days before I could get in to talk to her about, being interviewed. And I showed up, and the first thing she did was goes, okay, here, I want you to take a look at these sides and then read them over, and then we'll go through them. And I was like, okay, Rick never told me that I had any lines. I thought I was just going to be like a wrestler in the background. I could just kind of blend in with everybody, and so I'm looking at the sides, and she goes, okay, let's read. And so I go, okay, I'm reading. I've never done this before. I'm really nervous now. And I kind of made a mistake, so I kind of laugh when I get nervous. She looked at me and she goes, we're looking for intensity here. Says, if you make a mistake, you continue on as if nothing happened. Got it? I was like, now this woman's like 5'2". And she's like giving me the business, and it's like, okay. So I read it through her again. We did it one more time. She gets on the phone. She calls Harold Becker, who was the director. She goes, hey, I got this guy I want you to see. She goes, okay, bring him over. Now they're in the hotel in Spokane. That's where they're based out of. So we walk out of her room. We walk around the hallway. We go into his room. He looks at me and he goes, takes the sides out of my hand. He goes, okay, you know the lines. I've read them like 3 times. And, they're not like monologues. We know this, right? They're like these little catchy lines that I get to say, which are great. By the way, they wrote some great lines for me, for the character, let's say. And I don't know how. I just believed him. And so he read the lines with me, and I just somehow remembered the lines. And he goes, okay, kid, let's see if you can wrestle. So now I had to go, perform for Cash Stone, he was a coach for Meade High School for, 30, 40 years. I mean, this guy was an, household name in the Spokane area. So he was taking care of all the wrestling practices and making sure we could all wrestle. So I had to go out there and do a 2-hour wrestling, to show him that I could wrestle. And he gave me the thumbs up. He says, okay, kid, I think you can do this. And I had another couple other auditions, and then it came down to, okay, they're flying this guy down from LA. The producers really like him. The director likes you. So you're both going to read for the producers and the director, and then we're going to go over, and so that Cash Stone can see him wrestle. We're going to go on set. Well, that's where they're shooting today. So we're going to see, they have a mat there, so we're going to get you on the mat, and you guys are going to wrestle. Okay, so I show up, and Cash casting director, my little 5'2" casting director, grabs me, and we walk over. And before I get to the door, Harold Becker comes out. He goes, "Okay, when you come in here, I want you to be completely intense, the whole time, no matter what happens. You got it?" And he goes, he smacked me. Like your coaches. And I gritted my teeth and I go, "Got it." And he goes, "That's what I want." So he turns around, walks back into the room. Now I walk into the room, and there's this lady in the front, the casting director from LA. She's going to read the lines to me. So now I'm I'm just staying tense, and I'm looking at her, and I'm like mean, and she's reading me lines like, "Hey, okay." I'm trying to be aggressive with a woman that's sitting right there. Every time I do a line, she does this. She goes, and I'm just going and she's in front and they're behind, So I'm like I finish my last line and I go, "Okay, thanks, Frank." And I turn around and walk out. I'm walking down the hallway with my casting director, and I go, "Hey, what's going on? Did I look stupid?" I have no idea how I look. It's something new to me. She goes, "No, they producers really like this other guy. She cast 2 other guys in this role. Neither one of those worked out. She has this guy. She wants him to get it. She was trying to trip you up." And I was like, "Oh, these guys are, this is serious." Right? So I kind of I understand kind of what the game plan is here. And so I really got to prove myself. So we go over to the set and we put our wrestling gear on. We get on the mat, and the coach comes out and he starts telling us, "Okay, you do a single leg, do a double leg, do it." And we're going back and forth. And I'm picking him up, throwing him down. He's picking me up, throwing me down. And we're wrestling back and forth. And he goes, "Okay." And we took a break. And then every time that John Peters looked over at me, I just
well, let's pause for one.
I would stare him down until he looked away.
Let's pause for 1 second. I've got something that I want you to watch for a second. We'll see that face.
I think this is a big mistake, man. Why give yourself nightmares? I already have nightmares. It could be worse. Hey, Shute! Careful, Mom. Shute! Yeah? Do I know you? Louden Swain, Thompson High. Think you'll make a way? I don't know. I hope so. I hope so too.
Just to let you know, that is one of my favorite scenes in any movie. So I love it. That's I hope so too. I always like that part. That's like one of the best lines. You could have said anything, right? But I hope so too. I like it.
So, and that scowl on your face, if that's the one you're talking about in the meeting, it was perfect. To me, I just go, "Yeah, he's serious. That's business." So tell us about the log you have over your shoulder too in a bit.
Well, just to finish, because John Peters came up to me then after 10, 12 minutes. He goes, "Okay, kid, you got the role." He says, "Every time you looked over, I looked over at you and you just stared me down." He says, "That's what I'm looking for." So it was that's what got me the job. I don't know. Maybe it was part of it. It was all the things that maybe came together, but it was 5 different auditions. It wasn't just that I walked in and got the role. And by the way, I was 217 pounds. And I had dropped.
You weren't 167?
Not quite. What's weird is that he never even said I read the script and it was I'm supposed to play a 168 pounder. And, they said, "Well, we want you to lose some weight so you're closer to Matthew's, size." And I'm like, okay. I just went from bodybuilding, bulking, which was I was eating 5 platefuls of food for breakfast and 5 platefuls of food for lunch and 5 platefuls of food for dinner, down to egg whites for breakfast, tuna on a bed of lettuce with a squeeze of lemon,
Like a
didn't eat
wrestling
dinner.
diet used to be.
Yeah, I didn't eat dinner. I jumped on a stationary bike and rode for an hour for dinner, and that was my cut for 2.5 weeks to draw me down. And it's like I had no energy. Like I went and worked out with the wrestling team, and I would last like 2 minutes, and I would just like nothing left, and my delts were like aching because they were breaking down. It was like the protein in my delts were breaking down for energy. It was like everything that Matthew's character was going through was what I was actually going through in real life. And I was ended up at 189 pounds. I was at 4% body fat because we did a water submersion in the human performance lab. And I felt like, holy crap. And I stayed there for 10 weeks. And we filmed for 10 weeks. But again, so I know how to cut weight. I know how to cut weight hard. I know how to cut weight wrong. And I just know that there's when I go and do appearances at tournaments and different things, and these kids are like, only thing I've had is like 5 almonds. And I'm like, Jesus, man, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's like, this is not how you perform. And then another father said, I've been working with my son on his cardio, and he just went dead. Well, what he did right before is he did one of those water flushes, and he flushed all the water out, didn't get rehydrated properly. What happens when you flush out the water is you also are flushing out electrolytes. And guess what? Electrolytes are what power things in your body. They're called catalysts. Those are the minerals. Those are the electrolytes. When you sweat, it's salty. That's electrolytes coming out of your body. And in that little cell that they call the power part of the cell is where the ATP is produced in the mitochondria.
Mitochondrion.
Yeah, in the mitochondria. Well, if you don't have electrolytes, it won't fire. And you can't absorb nutrients. You can't absorb vitamins. And so it's like we really need to get our head around the science and understand what we're doing to ourselves and how difficult it is to rehydrate quick enough. And your brain is most of your brain is water as well. 70-80% of your body is water. So you think it's important. It's more than just a little important. It is huge. And it can make a big difference if you're dehydrated.
Yeah,
I've got a question, Frank. What do you do? Any testing, like pre workout, before we start, changing their diet up or changing up different supplements, and then again after the wrestling tournament, we talk about how much depletion we have, and do you do any testing to figure out what electrolytes or what we're missing?
Yeah, I will do so I've been working with the athletes, and then so what I do is I do a consultation, and the first hour we go through everything that they're putting in their body, everything they're drinking, everything that they're eating, and then we go through all of that. So I do what's called O-ring muscle testing. I do applied kinesiology testing to make sure that they're not putting anything in their body they shouldn't, because sometimes it's about taking out, which, like, if you start talking to these kids, what do you think they're eating? They're at the fast food place. They're having, fries. Well, most of the time the fries are trans fats. Trans fats are the things that cause this glyconated process in the body, which you're aging and your toxicity, and you're raising certain inflammatory markers. And like fries may have a half-life of 52 days. So like what you put in your body is still there 52 days later. And you think the kids are going to have French fries just every 52 days? No. Any of the fast foods that they're going to, those are like nutrient deficient. It costs more energy to process that than you're actually getting from it. If you're drinking sodas, they have a lot of the caramel color is cancerous, a high sugar, all the chemicals. It's like, boy, talk about inflammation bomb in the body. And it's like every disease known to man begins with an inflammatory process. Bill's aware of this, I see.
So how would I got a question then. I've been, of course, watching Gary Brecka for a couple of years, and I've been tempted to buy a hydrogen water bottle. You think that's worth it?
Okay, so hydrogen water, I think, is key. I think it can be very helpful. I actually used it quite often with Nick, and had good results. The key to it is that it needs to be taken in a very powerful amount in a very short amount of time. And the best way that I know how is that there's formulations that are in tablets that you put in water. And as soon as that tablet dissolves, you drink it. And it's about between
Is that
6 to
more
8.
is that because of more alkaline, or is it?
It means that it has more hydrogen.
I'm a chemistry and physics guy, so I love this stuff.
Yeah, so you're going to have more hydrogen available that are going to be on the water molecules. You don't want to close the bottle up. This is something that I spoke with a gentleman and actually creates these types of things that he creates the H2 pills. And he says, first of all, you don't close it up because then that destroys things as well. So what is that hydrogen bottle? It's all closed up. That's one thing. And then they said, like, and I don't have the numbers on how much you are getting at that moment in time, but it is a profound amount of hydrogen in the water during that particular moment when that tablet finally just completes its. It looks like an Alka-Seltzer thing. It just kind of fizzes and the water's all fuzzy. It's really high in the content at that moment, and so you hit it then. What happens with the hydrogen bottle is there's like, from what I'm understanding that was presented to in the piece that they did on this, was it's like 2.2 amounts of moles of hydrogen in the water. So it's like a small amount. And if you're doing that long term, for sure, that's not the way that you want to present that to your body. So I love the concept, but I don't like the application. Okay. Hydrogen, and actually hydrogen water, that if you do it the way I just suggested, is you put it in the glass, you let it fizz, and just as soon as it finishes, you gang it down. You're going to get your best bang for your buck, and you're going to have the best results from that. Okay, so that's where I like a lot of the things that he says. I was questioning that, and then saw a presentation done, and they showed these different numbers and how this is done properly, and I went like, okay, that's why I was not happy with the bottle. I didn't trust it to be as dynamic as they suggested.
Then how about like specific amino acids that are important for the recovery? Are there anything that you work with?
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, like we're gonna. So part of what
I'm setting you up questions that I.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, well, and so these are kind of my little secrets, and a few other people know this as well. But it's like essential amino acids, man. You want to have essential amino acids. You want to find a good brand. You want to have the right dose. This is where I get into. That's why I get paid to do what I do, is because I find out exactly how much they need, when they need it, and the dose. Everybody is dose dependent. Everything you put in your body is dose dependent. Even water. So can you do too much water? Yeah, people have died from doing too much water. They were guzzling it. They asphyxiated themselves. I don't know exactly what they did, but they overhydrated and it killed them. So everything that goes in your body has what we call, this cycle of like, okay, a little, it's not enough. It's not a therapeutic dose. There's the right amount. That's in the therapeutic dose. Anything over and above that is excess. And now your body has to work to just process it. So you want to have the right amount of each one, but I really like doing, essential amino acids on an empty stomach. And so you don't have to feel like you have to eat a ton of protein. You can supplement it with this along with your protein. I mean, if you want to do a general thing, I like having a plate. If you look at a plate, it should be 3/4 salad and vegetable and 1/4 protein and some healthy fat with every meal. That's the simplification of it. And you notice I didn't say any grains. I didn't say any bread. I didn't say any pasta. Every one of those pro-inflammatory.
Right.
So there's 8 pro-inflammatory. So when I was doing blood work and I was sending my blood work to a company that analyzes this and Cyrex Labs. And if you want to spend the money, you can send your blood work off to Cyrex Labs. It will tell you everything your body is okay with and not okay with. And it's about $1,000 to run all those tests. If you want to run all the tests, there are some specific ones you can run. There's cross-reactive ones you can run. And what I found is over 95% of everybody that I sent had an inflammatory markers for gluten, soy, dairy, meaning cow dairy, corn, peanuts, sweeteners, artificial sweeteners, and for some people, eggs.
So you're saying the body isn't processing those right?
it says that the body is going to it's going to cause inflammation in your body. I found one person in all my testing of 30 plus years, he was 19 years old, and his body tested okay for gluten. I was like, wow, okay. Everybody else, nothing, because there was a certain time of year or a certain year when everything changed in the way that they manufactured the wheat. They made them into, instead of having these long stems and everything, they made them super short and short and stocky. They changed them. And so that it became in a process now that the protein aspect of the gluten molecule is now not able to be, digested properly, and causes inflammation and causes leaky gut and causes, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Causes your, insulin to spike. As soon as you have insulin spiking, then you're going to have insulin going to pack things into cells, and that's not what you want. So anytime you have a high sugar spike and then crash and then spike and then crash, and if you've ever noticed that, a lot of people will have those crashes, and then they have to have more sugar and they have to have more, gluten or something else that they're going to take to kind of catch them back up again.
So
and that's the beginning of aging, that's the beginning of inflammation, all that. Go ahead.
Your best suggestion for some of these parents out there watching for their kids that are going to be starting to watch their weight, watch what they eat, because they're getting into that about a month before the first practices, and they want to prepare let's say their pantry full of the right foods or their fridge. Do you have any good suggestions for wrestling parents?
First of all, they're not in the pantry.
Oh,
right. First of all, they're not in the pantry, right? They're not processed foods. They're in the refrigerator. Yep.
So what I usually will say is get rid of the white foods, the white sugar, the white flour, the ice cream, the dairy, watch the white foods. That's the easiest thing to do. And then you just have to go, it's all the ultra processed foods. It's all the that have preservatives in them. It's anything that's been deep fried. It's all of those foods you want to avoid: cookies, cakes, candies, crackers, sodas. I mean, all of those deep fried foods. It's all about eating the sides of the grocery stores where you want it close to as whole food as possible. Like you can eat bacon, but you got to make sure the bacon is no hormones, no antibiotics, no sulfites, and you don't overcook it. You don't cook it on too high a heat, because as soon as it caramelizes, that becomes a carcinogenic. So you keep it at low heat and you cook it. Make sure you cook it all the way through. Then have eggs. Make sure they're pasture-raised eggs, and you cook those very softly. That's one of the best forms of protein you can have. This is what I would have for breakfast. It would be like two strips of bacon, 2 or 3 eggs, and a couple slices of avocado with some sea salt on it. That is a great breakfast. And it gives you everything that you're going to need. And boy, it's like your energy stays level.
Yeah. One thing you said that was really interesting to talk about the half-life of those French fries. And I'm sure there's a lot of other of those foods that you just talked about kind of fall into the same story. And you think about how short a wrestling season is, right? So if I have French fries the first day of the season and I have them again, 3 weeks later, they're with me for the whole season.
Exactly.
So, I mean, this nutrition deal is a long-term process, right? Everything we do today affects us not only today, but maybe it's 52 days from today and or longer. So, all those things are important.
It's really tough. And this is what I hear all the time is like, I have a teenage kid. He's hanging out with his friends. How, this is really tough. What do I do? How do I, it's like, well, he has to make a commitment, and he needs to kind of be like, if they go out to eat, then it's like, okay, I'm going to have salad and I'm going to have a piece of fish, or I'm going to have a piece of chicken on that. And I'm not going to do the deep, I'm not going to do the fries. I'm not going to do the Cokes. I'm not going to, do the milkshakes. So I have a little hack for the dairy. If people want to have a little bit of cheese, this is what I recommend. And most of the people I've tested are okay with either sheep or goat. So you can have a little bit. I don't say still you need to do a lot of it, but you can still have a little bit. And if you need some kind of a milk substitute, then you need to go to coconut milk. There's a lot of plant-based products out there that have lectins in it that also are damaging to your gut and not good for you. So that's kind of where I can say like a general guidance to kind of move forward with that. But it becomes very simple to have, the whole family is involved with this. What's hanging around the house is important too. So if you have like Snickers bars and cookies and cakes and chips and stuff like that, instead of having pepitas, which are a great source, or maybe an apple or some berries. So if you're going to do fruit, I recommend berries, and I recommend the blueberries, the blackberries, and raspberries, some strawberries. And it's all dose dependent. So you can't go, I'm just going to eat berries for lunch. It means that you're going to have, the best way to do that is just take one each one and, eat it. That's the other thing, is we have this tendency to like grab something and go. Like, they didn't even chew it. They didn't even recognize it. It's like, they're on the run. You need to sit and chew your food, masticate, because what happens in the mouth is that it gets tagged. It's like, okay, we got this nutrient, that nutrient, it's going to go here and that's going to go there. But if you take a couple bites and swallow, you're missing that whole process. So take your time, chew your food, enjoy some conversation. Don't drink too much at a meal. That's the other thing. When I had a patient said, "Oh, my son gets stomach aches after every meal," and I said, "Okay, well, how much does he drinks like 3 glasses of water every meal?" It's like, well, only let him sip. You should only maybe drink like this much out of a glass that entire meal, because that will dilute your stomach acid. And if it's cold, it makes it even worse. This is an issue that Oriental medicine it talks about warming the middle jiao, which is your stomach. Keeping that healthy by keeping it warm. They drink teas all the time. There's a reason for that. And your stomach gets long, and it's supposed to be fire. And you get cold on it, you're going to put your fire out. When you put your fire out, you don't break your food down. And then your spleen, which is paired with, they have what we call paired organs. You have a yin and a yang organ. The yin organ is a spleen. The yang organ is the stomach. So when you put too much of cold water on your yang, which is your fire, you put your fire out, and now your spleen's going to become more damp. And you have more dampness in your body. You're not processing your food properly, as well as, there's all sorts of things the spleen does as far as producing T cells and T helper cells and T fighter cells and other things like that.
Okay. There's a science to it all. Definitely. Okay, now I do had one person. I'm just going to pop it up there just because he's a good fan. They asked the question. Yep. Always having the good lines. I know a lot of people are interested and have become a fan of you because of the perfect name for, how could you say it?
Wrestling.
The wrestler. Shute is a wrestler. True story. And I'm not sure if I told you this, but my first son, his name is Louden. Yeah, and anyway, it wasn't named Shute, but Louden is his first name because of that movie, actually, Louden Swain. And I had my Shute. I had a nemesis when I was a junior in high school, 3-time state champion, who was Mr. Wrestler in the state. That my whole goal was to beat him, and he was older than me, and I had him in the state finals, up ahead with 2 minutes left, basically, and I lost.
Oh, so close.
I was ahead of him. Yeah. So my Shute, I didn't have the same ending story to it in the state finals, but then I still had more wrestling to do years later too. Still, but it's kind of funny. Steve McCormick and those people that are in North Dakota know Steve pretty well.
Kind of thought that's who it was. Yeah.
And he looked like you. I mean, he was put together. He was in a lot of ways. We wrestled that was 145. He looked like about a 175 pounder. He just had that build, there's no legs on him, but I tell you what, he had all upper body, and he was put together. So, and I've mentioned that other times on my shows. Who was your Shute? And they had, everybody's got it in there. If you're in the wrestling background that know that story, everybody has that person you were shooting for, or somebody you wanted to try to beat, and it's kind of a motivational factor. I think that's really big. You in some ways you played a big role in my life without even being there, and it's kind of funny how that is.
I don't know if you realize that we're coming up on the 40th anniversary of Vision Quest. That'll be February 15th of next year. It's been 40 years. It's been 4 decades. And every time I think like, okay, I'm done, I can walk away. I've really tried to. I love wrestling. I feel like they just don't get the kudos that they deserve. It's one of the toughest sports I played all types of sports. I was a basketball. I was a football. I was really athletically inclined. And if like I took on something, it was the mindset of Shute. By the way, it was like that is who I am. Underneath it all is that I have a one mindedness, and like when we would go snow skiing, this is where I look back and it was like, oh, like in fourth grade, I started snow skiing. Now, I was first one on the lift. I wanted to get my first run in as soon as possible. I wanted to get every lift. I would ski down as fast as I could. I get back on the lift. I'm back up. I had as many runs as I possibly can. My brother would do a couple of runs and he would go in, have some hot chocolate, kind of talk and kibitz. My mother would have to bring a sandwich out to me as I'm standing in line. And I was
It
just
takes a
driven.
special person. I know that mindset. I tell you what, winning is addictive, and being
You
being
have
the
to
best and
have
being first.
You just have to have that kind of. I can see it in Jordan Burroughs. I can see it in Nick Sirianno. I can see it in these guys that have been long term and they never quit. They never give up. I mean, it's just extraordinary. They have the same kind of intention. And I drove my body beyond its limits. And I would be riding on. I would make it to the last run, and I'd come down, and everybody be waiting in the car, and I'd take my skis off, get in the car, and on the way home, I'd be crying because my legs hurt so much. They were in so much pain because I didn't miss. It was like insanity. I don't know what drove me at that young age, but it still kind of runs through. I try to be more balanced now, but it is a wrestler's mindset. I really believe that more than any other sport is that they have the ability to mentally push past the physical pain, because there is a lot of physical pain and physical challenges that no other sport has that gets close. I mean, sometimes boxing, sometimes martial arts, but this is mostly like high school sports that you see. This is probably one of the toughest. And I love practice. I love wrestling. I love learning things. I love pushing myself. You got to love it. If you're
How,
like,
how about
I can't wait.
you guys ever have you guys ever have a reunion and get some of the cast members back together?
I had heard that there was a 30-year anniversary in Spokane, but I never got contacted. I got contacted by somebody in Los Angeles where I was living, and it was Harold Becker, the director, Harold, the teacher, there was an English teacher, and myself, and then Matthew's wife showed up, just in support. And so they showed Vision Quest. And I thought it was kind of interesting because it was really more about the film, people that were coming up in the film industry, like writers, producers, directors, because this film is still topical. It still has resonance. Harold Becker was genius in the fact that his eye for detail was extraordinary. He did Onion Field. He did Taps. Guess who was in Taps? What actors were in Taps?
Yep.
Sean Penn,
Yeah.
Timothy Hutton, Tom Cruise, Ronnie Cox.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta just adjust the thing so I don't get this slide across my face. Or hang on one second.
Sure, not a problem.
All right, guys. I don't know if that made it worse. You gotta sit back here.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got to say, what an incredible mind that guy had. Like how short my hair was in the movie.
Yeah.
And so I would film, and then if I wasn't filming, you weren't on set. So I'd be home, I'd be working, I'd be kind of studying, I'd be doing whatever I needed to do, and then they call me back out. Okay, you got a scene next week. So it'd been like 5 days since I'd been on set. And the first thing you do is you go in and get your hair cut and makeup on, and then they put the clothes on you're going to wear for the day, the outfit, whatever. And so I finished that. That's the first thing I do is you show up, hair and makeup, and then I'm out on the mat, and I'm just stretching, warming up, and they're over there shooting, and they took a break, and then Harold Becker comes over, and he's watching these guys adjust the lights and get ready for the next scene, because it takes like an hour to reset after you've set up. And he looks down and he goes, while he's watching them over there, he goes, You been to hair and makeup? I go, yeah. He goes, did they cut your hair? And I go, and no. But I was like, it's been 5 days, right? He goes, have them go trim your hair. And I was like, okay. I mean, this guy's trying to like set up the scene over here, and he's looking. He's like, maybe my hair, what? It grew like that much. He's so everything is detailed, and so he was. That was part of the reason this thing came together the way it did. And then he also was the one that really picked all the people for the roles. And look, Matthew was brilliant. He carried the film. He was the one that was in every shot.
Right.
Linda Fiorentino, she was brilliant as the woman that was the older woman and tough and sexy. I mean, and his father, Ronnie Cox, and then Harold, and then Charles Hallahan was the coach. That guy has been around forever. I mean, if you just look, you know who else is in there you may not recognize is what is the black actor that was in there? Do you remember?
Yeah, he's one of the heavier guys too in the
Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah.
Yep.
Forrest Whitaker had small lines in this movie. He saw the talent there. And shortly after that, he went and did Color of Money, and then he just completely blew up. Because he did that scene with Paul Newman, and it was just like he was in the scene with Paul Newman and made just what a huge impression in that scene. I don't know if you remember, he was playing a pool shark, he sharked Paul Newman, and Paul Newman looks at him and like, what just happened? And he goes, yeah, question I want to ask you. He goes, yeah, what? He goes, do I look fat? You know, that was like, oh, Forrest, what an amazing actor. So
how about that? Did you ever meet the writer of the Vision Quest?
Terry Davis is an extraordinary person. I've gotten to know him personally. I stay in touch with him. He has an extraordinary mind.
Lives in Minnesota. Yep, and
he's not. I think he's back in Spokane now.
Oh, we might be back in Spokane. Okay.
Now, the last time I heard, he had gone into a home, so he could be monitored better. To be taken. He has some health issues, so he needs people that, in case something happens, they're there. He can't live by himself so much anymore.
He was another guy I was trying to get on for this thing.
Oh, he's got I don't know if you know about his history, but this guy has got an incredible mind. He's just his mind works so fast, and he's got what I would say a bit of ADD going on. But he's brilliant, and he has these great concepts, and he thinks outside the box. And he's in the process of writing another book. It's called Swain's Son. I'm trying to get out of this thing here.
Well,
Swain's Son.
Bill and I know somebody that read it.
Okay.
And he told us just a little bit about it, but I tell you what, a Vision Quest 2 would be hard to match, but it'd be or in that sense,
So in regards to that, I've been working with a producer who is actually directing the film right now, Michael Gray, who's out in New Jersey. You may or may not know him. He's got kids that wrestle. His sons wrestle. He's got a whole program. He coaches kids, but he also produces, and he's produced several other films. What Breaks the Ice, and he did Fightville with Poirier and as a documentary. So he's done other things, but he's in the middle of filming a movie that he wrote, and so very excited about that. 2-3 years ago, we sat down, we were talking, and it's like, okay, what's it going to take to get another movie made? And he says, we were both saying this could be impossible to get another movie made. I said, well, let's do a series, because that's what's big right now. And those are a lot easier to shoot, a lot easier to get made. And so we've written a series, and it's a little bit like Cobra Kai. It's 30 years later. Hey, what happened to the characters? Why did Shute lose that match? Was there something that preempted that? Why would a two-time state champion lose
backstory?
Somebody who's barely holding his mud and walk out on the mat and lose for some reason? So we answer that question. We also find out what happened to him after he lost, what happened to Matthew as going forward, and we project into the future. and it's got some great surprises in it. And we bring in women's wrestling because, hey, man, women's wrestling is a monster.
The best.
Came at the right time, right?
Yep.
It's huge.
We promote it as big as anything. We love it.
And we've got some great women wrestlers. We've got some great women that to look up to that are at the top of the game. And I'm just so excited about where that's going and how many. I used to teach what's called a women's boxing class. It was self-defense. And we called it Boxer Girls. And I worked with women back, 40 years ago. And they had no real outlet back then. And they had no way of learning how to defend themselves and to be aggressive and make it okay. And we taught them how to throw punches with the palm, with the elbow, to grab and poke, and also spinning back kicks, just so they have their balance. And I would have them actually punch and say no. And I got to tell you, I can't. Just about every one of them at one point broke down and cried because there was some event in their life where they were mishandled, not treated properly, that they didn't speak up or they didn't stick up for themselves. And those emotions all came out. So we have women's wrestling now. We have women's MMA now. We have all these avenues for these women to really learn techniques and to become, empowered. I'm thrilled.
Bill, explain what you do for girls wrestling right now.
Yeah, no, I'll even just throw it back a little bit, right? So we can go back. We were talking about the nutrition when we had a girls program here starting Carrington a couple of years ago. That was like the first discussion from a bunch of guys that grew up in the sport, cutting weight, doing it all the wrong way, and with the girls, we just all said, hey, you just wrestle what you weigh. Let's just be nutritious. And we've seen girls that have definitely come down in weight. But it's not because they're cutting weight, right? It's just because they're doing the right things. And one of them happens to be a granddaughter of mine, and she's doing all the right things, and it's been awesome. So yeah, we have I work with the local club, and I do a lot with the girls, and I spent a lot of time. I've been at more girls wrestling matches over the last 2 or 3 years than I have boys, to be honest with you. I mean, we've been running around the country just like we did when my son was doing the same thing, and I've been able to watch some of the top girls in the country at whether it's at Fargo or Tulsa for or for junior duels, and I'll just tell you this: the best girls in our country is great at women wrestlers as we have out there. The best ones we have are young.
Are still coming up.
It's really fun to watch. I mean, hey, Amita Lohr is a gold medalist.
I was going to bring her up.
She could win 12 of them. I don't know. I mean, she's awesome, but she's young. But the young ones that are, freshmen and sophomores in high school right now are young, and they are really good, and they're really fun to watch. And they have great attitudes. And, you were talking before about, the things that wrestlers have, and that John mentioned competitiveness there, but it's just the need to suffer. I mean, for whatever reason it is, I mean, that's what we do. And I still do it today. I mean, I like to suffer as much as anybody, and I still wrestle 3 days a week, and it's getting harder all the time, and it's okay. And
it's the high after the suffer. It's something about knowing you survived.
Whether it's out riding a bike or, doing something you haven't done before. And these girls, and it's not all of them, but it's not all the boys either, right? But they are the same way. I mean, I see it on, every Sunday there's 40 or 50 girls that get together in Mandan, North Dakota for a camp the last 6 weeks, and they got a couple more weeks to go. It's the same way. The girls that are there, I see it down, watching them at these national tournaments. And I think the sport of women's wrestling is awesome. And we've had some great world team members come into, as well as Troy and Terry Steiner come to do camp here in Carrington. It's a small town of 1,300 people or whatever it is. And as well as a couple other world team members or world medalists. So we try to show these young girls exactly what's out there and what's available for them. And it's been great. I really, I light up. We start talking about women's wrestling and girls wrestling, and watching these young girls that are little, right, 6, 7, 8 year olds looking up to the high school girls, and then the high school girls we brought walking up to the world team members that we have, the senior level athletes. We brought in Life University last year, their women's team just prior to the national tournament. They took second in the national tournament, and they came in. They just practiced in our room and answered questions for our girls, and it's the same thing. I mean, these girls they like to work hard. They like to suffer. They let things roll off their back a little more than the boys did, and they also they don't know everything. They feel like they need to know every single thing, but they don't. The boys we're coaching, they know everything already. The girls need to know every single thing, but they're fun to work with.
Kudos, coach. Thank you. I mean, this is one of the things I talk about is that the coaches are the blood of the sport. They really are the lifeblood of the sport, and it's chosen suffering, and it's about making the uncomfortable comfortable. And it's like the people that have kind of watched Vision Quest and started training with logs up the stadiums or up the hills or all those things, or we used to carry the wrestlers. We're training the body, but we're training the mind. We're training the mind because the body will do pretty much anything you ask of it. That's why when I would ski for the entire day, I was just excited about skiing. My mind overrode what my body was saying, like, hey, this is tough. My mind thought it was tough, but my body could just keep going. I'm sorry, I kind of mixed that up, but I would drive myself over and beyond the physical by actually being focused on how much fun it was. And you're training that aspect in your body, not just your body when you're lifting the weights, but your mind to supersede that first inkling of thought that, like, hey, this is pretty hard. It's going to be difficult for me to get up that hill or down that hill. And, you've got to put that out of your mind. Just go, what is your goal? And how much fun is this? And how demanding do you want to, put your intensity on what you want to accomplish? So it's just, to me, it's when these wrestlers get out and when they're challenged in the real world, they're not going to just fall on the ground and do poor me. They're going to go, I've had worse. I've had to deal with hardships. I've had to come back from greater losses. I've been able to pull myself up after I've, this or that. It's a great way to, get that mentality out there. And so that it carries them through their life. And I've heard this through, all ages.
Yep. No, we understand that at our age.
Oh, so true. Well, we're getting close to that hour already. Imagine that we've disappeared. We do something with our guests. We could talk quite a bit longer too if we need to, but I want to put you through what we call our rapid fire questions. Now, some of these were for wrestling coaches to begin, but I put some new ones in here, Bill. Might be a surprise too, but I'm going to give you some rapid fire questions and see how you do. What is the one piece of advice that you could give a wrestler on their first day?
Enjoy the process.
Yes, awesome. Okay, what is the most underrated skill in wrestling?
Consistency.
Uh-oh, tough one. Popsicles or dilly bars?
Dilly bars with cheese, with some sheep cheese or goat cheese with them. That will level out your blood sugar. It'll process better. And
Yeah,
I'm an ice cream guy more than a popsicle guy.
Okay, good.
And if they're dark chocolate, especially.
Okay. Give me 3 characteristics that all wrestlers need to have.
Intensity, focus. What do I would say? It's just, what is the third one? Determination.
Okay. Do you have any hidden talents? Something very few people would know about.
Well, most people look at me and think that from Vision Quest and think that I'm a knuckle dragger. And I actually have a master's degree in Oriental medicine. I have several certifications in Schulman therapy. I'm a certified Qigong instructor. I have a Reiki master.
Wow.
I have a black belt in Aikido. So I've been on the planet a while. So I've accumulated some techniques and some knowledge. And so I'm not just a pretty face carrying a log.
Okay. Have you been over to the Orient? Have you been to China or?
I have not, but I've studied with a gentleman that came straight from China, could not speak English. I studied with Yuan Mingzong for several years for Qigong. And it was, we would do like 3-day events where we'd be submersed into it. And it was an incredible experience.
Okay. Are you a mama's boy or a rebel?
Rebel.
Okay. Physical or mental athlete?
Gotta have both.
I felt that coming.
Yes, definitely. Now this might be a tough one for you, but maybe not. Best wrestler you've ever wrestled? Hopefully not Matthew. How about Modine?
Louden Swain.
Louden Swain.
Rick Thiefalt was a guy I wrestled. He was the guy that got me involved in Vision Quest. He actually went over and trained in I want to say Japan and came back. He was like undefeated in high school. He never let anybody score any points. A little bit like Dan Gable back in the day. Yeah. This guy's neck was like a frickin' tree trunk. Like, I don't care. Well, you can get him in a head and arm or whatever. He could twist and bridge out of that because his neck was just an incredible piece of equipment. But it was no joke. This guy was serious. So
definitely. Okay. Your favorite number?
7.
Okay. Is there something behind number 7?
That's just the first number that came to my mind.
Okay.
Sometimes
it's
like a quarterback. So
yeah.
Here's my favorite numbers. It's a 369 because it's the beginning of creation. It's a cycle of 3 is the beginning and 6 in the middle and 9 is completion. So it's 369. In Oriental medicine, we always did things in series of 3s, 6s, and 9s. And then we go to 18s and we go to 36s. So we do multiples. And they found that those number 7 is important in Oriental medicine. That's one of the reasons I said it, is because every 7 years there's a specific type of change in the body. And so at 7 years old, it's one of the times that your body has got more information than it probably will in the rest of its life. And then when you're 14, your body changes. You start to go through hormones. When you're 21, so you start going through that 7-year process cycle. But there's also 369, so I always like to do things in 369s.
Okay, pretty cool. This is a good one for you. Best after weigh-in meal?
So it depends on how fast and how quickly you need to be on the mat. So if you weigh in, it's usually like an hour or two. You don't want to put a lot in your stomach. That's going to have to be broken down. So your proteins better not be hard proteins to break down. They better be proteins you're going to absorb quickly. I prefer something a little bit softer and quicker, and it'll probably be something like ketone esters along with a break, and then some H2 in your water, and then a break, and then then nitric oxide. These are like high-end concepts. If you're just between matches, I'm going to give you an idea of like a zone meal concept, which would be an apple, some goat cheese, and some blanched almonds. It's a complete protein, and you get enough sugar in the apple that you're going to get some energy back. But oh my God, you better get those electrolytes in, because if you've done any kind of weight cut and restricted of any kind of water, you better get those electrolytes in the body. I even like to have all those going on while I'm training. And I'll have some green tea mixture with essential amino acids, and I'll have electrolytes in that. And then I'll do a little, like a teaspoon or 2 of honey in my drink, so that I don't go into that debt afterwards. Because there's that big window, right, where everybody says, oh, you got that 30-minute window post-workout where you better get your protein in there. Well, even if you put whey protein in at that time, an hour and a half before that's going to be absorbed and processed properly, perhaps. So you need to be sipping on something throughout your workout that's recovering that automatically, so you don't go in the dead afterwards.
Okay. Well, this is kind of interesting right here. Another one that I have for coaches. Your go-to snack.
I like pepitas, or I like pistachio nuts, and or a few walnuts. So I like to go nuts. I like to go. There's some carbs. It seems to be that a lot of times I like a little bit of salt. Like them to be salted with sea salt, so I get the electrolytes along with that, and it's fulfilling. So I'm not going to overeat, and so you just don't eat a ton of them. You just have a small snack.
Okay. One more here. How do you define success instead of just on the mat? But how would you define success?
I think that you meet the goals that you aspire to. Like, you want to be a better at single leg takedowns, and you got your takedowns. If you're working on shooting from both sides and you were able to accomplish that, it is setting goals for yourself, accomplishing those goals, whatever they might be. And it's not always about working on the things that you're best at. It's really working on the things that you're not best at. And that's what matches usually show you. It's like, oh, he got out from underneath me. It's like, how come I couldn't stop him? I have this great, breakdown thing that I do. He broke that. So it's like, oh, I guess I better learn some new techniques. Maybe it isn't going to be this arm chop every single time. You need to learn. Even if you win the match, you better learn something from that match. Like, oh, I was able to get around the outside because I did this before I did that. Yes, I head fake first this time instead of just going in all of. And yes, I was in the mindset of not going to give up this takedown. And so instead of just like, oh, he's got me, like, oh, shoot, I'm in a bad position. Like, fight, never stop till the whistle blows.
Okay. Here's one that might be a tougher one for you, but I do this for wrestling coaches. A shout out to the last coach you talked to.
That was Sean Bourmet.
Okay.
What an incredible coach, person. I met him because Nick was wrestling for Michigan. I've met several coaches, and his assistant coach, or I don't know if Kevin is his assistant or just a colleague. A couple of amazing coaches, mindset, mental, and just quality people. I didn't feel any attitude with them, but I mean, they have so much that they've done, accomplished, and they just seem to be so clean and so clear. Their energy felt clean and clear to me, and they were thoughtful. I drove from here down to San Luis Obispo. They were wrestling down there, and it's like about a 3-hour drive for me to get down there. And so I wanted to go down and watch and hang out with, Lee Kemp, because his son was wrestling or was going to wrestle, but didn't because he had an injury. But I like Lee Kemp, and I wanted to connect with him and then support the Michigan wrestlers. And, coach is always great. He gave me a Michigan hat because the year before in 2022, because I was working with Nick and really helping him with his nutrition, Nick was on fire, and his work in the wrestling room it inspired everybody else as well. And one of the coaches actually said he's the hardest working guy in the room. And so they ended up winning the Big Ten, which is the first time they've won that in years. They beat Penn State at the Big Ten in 2022. So that was a huge deal. So I showed up, and sure enough, he brought over a hat that was for the Michigan, Big Ten championships. He says, "You were really a big part of this. Thank you," and handed me a hat. I was touched, man. And took a picture with the team afterwards. And about, 5 days later, I get a framed picture from him of the team, just saying thank you. I mean, this is the kind of guy, he didn't have to do any of that.
Right.
He could have moving on. I got other things to deal with. That's eye of detail and just a good quality person. So I'm sorry I went a little bit long-winded there, but it's
No, you're good. They're good.
Right.
These are the type of stories that Bill and I dream about having. When we start talking to people, there's so much background that we don't know about, but guess what? We have these connections. All of a sudden a story comes out and, hey, I know that guy. Someone else that relates to it as we watch these things, and I just love it. Those names you all brought up, I I know them, and you can just visualize this as it's going on, so it's perfect. Here's a good one for you. Favorite quote. Now I was going to say movie quote, but you might have already gave that up on my website or the Facebook. But you could say
So
favorite quote.
I've always lived this saying to thy own self be true, and I think that's I don't care what you do, where you go. I think that's the key for us. What we're trying to do here is find out really who we are and be true to that, true to our nature, and then walk that path, and take it as far as you can, and take it with passion. But it's like to my own self be true.
Awesome. Bill, do you have a favorite quote?
Oh, I don't know. I do from time to time. It seems to change as with what I'm doing. So I'm gonna hold off right now. But yeah,
Okay.
I do have some.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a few too. I usually say like no blood, no foul. I tell that to kids as we're going through a lab in biology. That is, some girl about stabbed me with something in the lab, and I'm going, "Hey, no blood, no foul," and she goes, "I could have killed you." I go, "No, I'm no good. I'm not bleeding. We're good." Little things, and then uh, I don't know this one if it matches for you or not, but here's one. Now, if you could change one rule in wrestling, what would it be?
I like the idea of getting points for push out in college. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. They changed some things. Did they implement that? I know they
It
did
did
like some
not.
changes, like a 3 points
Yep.
to the back and some,
Yep.
Oh yeah, it's now
They,
2 points for 2 seconds, 3 and 4, and they're doing this for high school now. Where the old my favorite number was 2 because of takedowns.
yeah,
Two people go. Now it's got to be 3 because all
or four to
takedowns are
the
now
back.
3.
yeah, that one
Yep.
was on the list of of recommendations, but they did not do anything with the step out. No. But
I think that
Yep.
it would change the dynamic that you can't just try and jump out of bounds and that you got to stay in there and fight. And if you
yeah,
don't, then it's like, this is what we want. We want people to stay in the middle of the ring. We want them to get after it. Um, if you're gonna stall, you better really hand fight well and not get pushed out.
yeah,
You
get
can't
back
just
to the
get
center.
like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to let him take my leg and I'm going to step out so we can call it and back to the center. No, it's like,
Mhm.
boy, that makes a big difference because you watch the way those points get scored in college and in the Olympics and stuff. You get pushed
Right.
out, that's a point.
Yeah,
Every
no
one of
doubt.
those counts.
Okay, one more. Your most memorable win.
It was
Could
on
be
the
anything in
tennis
life.
court. It was in
Okay.
the tennis court. I have to say, like, if I'm in the athletic world, other than getting the role of Vision Quest as Shute, because what an incredible honor, opportunity. I got to represent a two-time state champion. I got to represent the state, the mindset of wrestlers. That was my whole goal. My only thing is that I didn't want to let the wrestling community down by coming in there and being like a fish or flopping around and not, having the integrity and the intensity and the, show up, not just being physical, but being mentally strong and intense. And I feel like for me, it really did come together. And I have to say that, of course, they kind of set it up well, but they alluded to this guy, and so it had to be a big payoff and that was the opening scene that I actually introduced myself to the film was the stadium scene. And what an incredible scene to actually have, so there's that. I was in a tennis tournament and I got 6-0'd in the first. I was playing singles and I was playing a 4-5 level, and it was this guy was left-handed and he would serve and come in. I had no answer. He killed me. He killed me that 6-0 in the first set. I couldn't get in. I couldn't get by him. Oh my God. And so I set my intention. I'm just going to get 1 point at a time. I'm just going to get 1 point and just going to get to the next point. Ended up winning the second set. We went into a tie break and we were tied up, and I finally broke one ahead 1 point, and then I got the next point and I ended up winning that. That was one of my biggest wins as far as just in that where I was like being like completely destroyed, and I don't even know how I was able to do that other than setting that intention. And maybe he just freaked out and said, "How am I doing this?" This sometimes you just got to let that go. Meaning you got to let somebody go. Like they're going to be maybe fantastic, and then all of a sudden their brain creeps in, or they kind of get tired, or they get not focused, and they can't believe that they're doing what they're doing, and their intensity drops, and that's your opportunity to step in and fill that void, baby.
Okay. So someone else came on and they got one kind of question as it goes. Got Randy Ramey. It says, ever make it back to Spokane? Join late, so apologize if you already talked about it.
So I don't go back to Spokane very often. I went back for my 50th class reunion. So yes, I was in Spokane at that time, but I didn't kind of run around town. I just kind of jumped off the plane, got in a car, and went to Coeur d'Alene, which is only 30 minutes away from Spokane. And had my 50th class reunion, which is like kind of like scary. Like what? I'm 65 this year, and it's like wow, time is flying by, guys. So you make the most out of every day.
You're 50th and you're 65?
It was my 50th some years back, and I'm 65.
Oh yeah. But I was going to 50th class reunion to make you 68, maybe. Yeah, no doubt. I was thinking 50th class reunion. So like I had my 35th a couple of years ago. I'm going 50th. Boy, yeah.
And I could be wrong. Maybe I was only my 40th. I just remember the last time I was back in Coeur d'Alene was for a reunion, my class reunion. And I just like time and age and days during the week now. I'm just going like, how is this kind of like just scrambling along? And it's like this year is we're already almost into the wrestling season. And by the way, if you're not getting off all the junk food, the white foods, the candies, craps, and this is, you need to be off that now and into eating food that's going to feed you. It's going to feed your brain. It's going to support your body and growth. And if you're in high school, especially, these are the times when your body needs the most nutrition, the best nutrient-dense food possible because you're building hormones and you're trying to grow. And your brain needs that extra source as well.
Tell people how they can look you up online and everything else like that if they want to find more information out.
So you can always email me at Shute, which is spelled Shute, not the SHOOT. So SHUTE at Shute Shirts, like your T-shirts, like this one I have on. I sell the shirts, I sell the photos, but it's Shute at shuteshirts.com is the email. The website is just shuteshirts.com. Instagram is VisionQuest _ Shute 1985.
Okay.
That's about the easiest kind of way to get out there. I have some other applications, but let's keep it simple.
And I'll put it out on the website too. Yeah. Definitely people can contact you. And if they got some interest, I tell you what, we do anything to promote people that, are ambassadors to the sport of wrestling. That's Bill and I. We do a ton of that. And man, I could spend all night, but I know there's people out there that go, what are you doing, Gums, keeping him on for so long? He's got more important things to do. But Bill, you got some questions? I kind of let everything.
Yeah, so I got my nephew here, my brother's son. His birthday is today, so I'm going to finish up here, and then we're going to go out to dinner. So I'm excited about that, and thanks, guys, for having me on. There's a whole other one we could talk about is, I would love to kind of go deep dive into why carbohydrates and carb loading is not the way that I would want the athletes to perform. There's a much better way, much more scientific way to get that. And that's being a fat adapted athlete, not just being in ketosis all the time, but coming in and out of it. And there's a special way to do that. If you're interested, you need to reach out to me because you need to be guided properly to do this. And with the right nutrition, it just can take you to the next level of performance.
Well, Bill and I will have you on again.
That'd be awesome.
Yes, definitely. Bill, you got any questions for him?
No, I don't have any more questions. I just want to say one thing. We got about 30 days to the first day of the high school practice. We got here in the local area, they got Big Buck Nationals preseason tournament coming up this weekend in Moorhead. There'll be quite a few high school and younger kids wrestling there from North Dakota, Minnesota, probably South Dakota also. So, we're kind of into the swing of things. And today was the first day of practice for the NCAA athletes. So Division 1, 2, 3, they're in the room. They're going at it for real now, right? Not that any of them weren't wrestling yesterday, but today was the official first day of practice, which means first day of competition for them is maybe 2 weeks away. Probably 2.5 weeks away or something. There'll be tournaments going on. So
Yeah, that first weekend in November.
Yep, things are happening. So there's nothing more important than that these athletes can do right now than their nutrition, and it's awesome that we had Frank on today to just to remind us all of that. Get
Yep.
moving forward. Uh, throw a
Well,
log on your
I've only got
shoulder,
one
run some
last thing, and
stairs,
then
have some fun.
yep, definitely. I've got one last thing to say, then I'll let Frank lead us out for this. But just want to mention people out there, Dakota Grappler. I am finishing up the book. I still have probably about, I'd say 30 coaches who I still need information from South Dakota and about 10 in North Dakota. I will contact you tomorrow because that was supposed to be the deadline, guys, out there to get that into me. I've got then a week to put the book all together with all the people that haven't got it in yet, and then it goes to the printer so I can have it back before the beginning of the wrestling season. And then what else? I had one other thing. Oh yeah, I've got T-shirts myself that are coming out. That I'll have a pre-order for them. People wanted. I ran out completely, and so you can take a quick peek. I'll just show you. We can give T-shirts to kids out there at the wrestling tournaments too. The ones so last year I gave over about 200 plus T-shirts last year out to both North and South Dakota wrestlers, plus a lot of books. Uh, and so if you guys want, still, there's a couple of people out there that I can throw a few ads in. If somebody wants, just email me. You know all my information on Dakota Grappler. That's all I have to say, guys. I tell you what, Frank, let's lead out. Tell us a little bit more, and
Right.
let you go.
I just forgot. I was going to let people know that I'll probably be. I'm planning to be in the Chiller Theater at the end of October, the 25th, 26th, 27th. Then I'll be in the New Jersey area for a little bit, hanging out with Angelo Caprio and his team at Integrated Pain Management. Then I go to South Carolina on November 2nd, and Kevin Emily is hosting a tournament out there, so come see me there. And then I'll be in Window Rock, Arizona in mid-December for an appearance there. So look for me. Come to see me. Shake my hand. Let's talk wrestling. Let's talk nutrition.
Well, awesome. Well, guys, Dakota Grappler, we enjoy all your stuff. Feel free to contact us at any time if we can help you promote wrestling in the state of North and South Dakota. Frank, it's been a blessing to have you on. God bless wrestling. God bless you all, you guys. And guys, get out there and participate in the sport. Thanks a lot. You guys have a good night.